I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing this kind of story, but here I am. My name's Mark, and I've been married to Lisa for about 5 years now. Things weren't perfect, but I thought we had something solid. We had our fights, sure, but nothing I couldn't brush off. We were planning to upgrade my brain. Well, not just any upgrade, a neural memory enhancement. It's a cutting-edge procedure supposed to boost your cognition, make you sharper, remember everything better, that kind of thing. I was excited about it. I'd always been a bit forgetful, and this was supposed to be the future of human memory. Lisa was supportive at first, or at least she pretended to be. She always had a way of acting like she was interested in my projects, but I started noticing some weird mood swings from her. Sometimes she'd snap at me out of nowhere, or give me that icy glare when I'd ask her about her day. I shrugged it off. Maybe I was just overthinking it, probably because I was nervous about the procedure. But then came the little things that started to add up. She started missing appointments with me, claiming she was busy, but I'd catch her sneaking around on her phone late at night. I saw texts she'd deleted, and she'd get defensive if I asked about them. Said I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. But I knew better. Something was off. Then I noticed she was dressing differently, more provocative, more ready for action, as I later realized. It was subtle at first, but it made me uncomfortable because I knew she was hiding something. One night I stayed up a bit later than usual, waiting for her to come home. She came in, flustered, acting like she'd been out with friends, but her makeup was smudged, her hair was a mess. She tried to brush past me, but I stopped her. I asked her where she'd been, and she snapped, "It's none of your business, Mark." That's when I knew something was really wrong. I felt this cold pit in my stomach. There was a part of me that wanted to believe her, but deep down, I knew I was witnessing the beginning of something terrible. The next day, I decided to check her phone. I know it's invasive, but I was desperate to find out what was going on. I snuck into her room, grabbed her phone from her purse when she wasn't looking, and scrolled through. What I saw made my blood run cold. There were messages, flirty, explicit, downright disgusting, between her and some guy named Jason. They'd been sexting for weeks, talking about meeting up, about sex, about everything you can imagine. Her messages were dripping with desire, and she never once mentioned me. The thing that hit me hardest was the way she lied about everything afterward. She told me she'd never cheated, that it was all a mistake, and that Jason was just a friend. I confronted her that night. She looked me dead in the eyes and told me I was paranoid, that I was making things up. She called me insecure, accused me of not trusting her. She said she loved me, but that I was just overreacting. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she lie so easily? I'd seen her messages, I'd seen the way she was looking at her phone, the way she'd avoid my eyes. It was all there. And yet she kept lying, kept telling me I was crazy. I was furious, heartbroken, and humiliated all at once. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to react. That night I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd found. Part of me wanted to forgive her, hoped it was a mistake, a one-time slip, but deep down I knew. I knew she'd been cheating on me, probably for weeks, maybe longer. My mind kept racing with questions. Why? How? Could I ever trust her again, or was this the end? I didn't know. All I knew was that my world was shattered, and I was left standing there alone, trying to piece together what was real and what was just a lie. That night, after I found out everything, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the images in my head, her messages, the way she lied so effortlessly, the look in her eyes when I confronted her. It was like I'd been punched again and again. I kept asking myself how she could do this to me, how she could betray me so coldly. I thought I knew her. I thought we had something real, but I guess I was just fooling myself. The next morning I was furious, but also hurt beyond words. I wanted to lash out, to scream at her, to make her feel the pain she'd caused me, but I knew that wouldn't help. Instead, I decided I had to think clearly. I needed a plan, some way to confront her that would make her see I wasn't just some pushover who'd accept her lies. I spent most of that day pretending I was fine, but inside I was boiling. Every time I looked at her, I saw a stranger, someone I didn't recognize anymore. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by this manipulative, selfish person. I went through her phone again, this time looking for any other signs of her cheating. I found more messages, some deleted, some still there. She'd been talking to Jason almost daily. They arranged to meet that very weekend. I felt like my stomach was in knots. How could I have missed all the signs? How did I not see this coming? I'd always been a little naive when it came to her, but now I realized she'd been smart about hiding everything. I was just too blind or too trusting. I decided I couldn't let her keep playing me for a fool. I needed to do something drastic. I'd read about ways to get revenge, but I wanted her to feel what I felt: betrayed, humiliated, used. I wanted her to understand that she couldn't just cheat on me and get away with it. That's when I started to craft my plan. I wasn't just going to kick her out and call it a day. No, I wanted her to see the full extent of what she'd done. I wanted her to realize she couldn't lie her way out of this. Over the next few days, I started gathering evidence. I made copies of the messages, saved screenshots, and kept a record of her calls and meetings. I wanted everything ready for the moment I confronted her again. But this time, I wouldn't be the one begging for answers. I'd be the one exposing her for who she really was. I knew it would hurt her that she'd try to deny, lie, or manipulate again. But I was done playing nice. I was angry, and I was angry enough to make her regret ever crossing me. In the meantime, she kept up her act, acting like the perfect wife, pretending everything was fine, but I saw through it. She was on edge, snapping at me over small things, trying to cover her tracks. That's when I realized she was probably planning her own version of an escape. I'd caught her cheating, and she knew I knew. I could see the fear in her eyes sometimes, trying to maintain her composure. She'd always been good at lying, but now she was nervous, like she was walking on thin ice. One afternoon, I decided I'd had enough of waiting. I sat her down and told her I knew everything. Her reaction was classic. She gasped, then immediately started denying everything, throwing out every excuse she could think of. She said Jason was just a friend, that I was overreacting, that I was insecure, but I didn't buy it anymore. I'd seen enough to know the truth. I told her I wasn't going to play her game anymore. I was done with her lies. I told her I wanted a divorce, right then and there, and she started crying, pleading, trying to manipulate me into changing my mind. But I wasn't having it. That moment was a turning point. I felt a mix of relief and rage. Relief because I finally knew the truth and could stop pretending. Rage because she'd broken everything we had built. I looked at her, her bitchy, manipulative face, and I knew I'd have to do something to make her pay for what she'd done. I couldn't just walk away and pretend it didn't happen. I needed justice, some way to make her see what she'd lost. And I knew, deep down, I'd find a way. After I told her I wanted a divorce, Lisa's face twisted into something unrecognizable. The bitchy smirk she usually wore when she was trying to get her way disappeared, replaced by a look of pure panic. She started yelling, calling me all sorts of names: crazy, paranoid, a controlling idiot. She insisted she never cheated, that I was just seeing things or making it up in my head because I didn't trust her enough. Honestly, hearing her lie like that made my blood boil even more. She had the nerve to deny everything after I had proof, screenshots, messages, everything. She then launched into her usual bullshit, trying to manipulate me into backing down. "You're just jealous," she yelled, voice trembling. "Jason is just a friend. You're overreacting. You're insecure. You're imagining things again." She spat out those words like they were some kind of shield, like if she kept lying enough times I'd buy it. But I didn't. I could see the genuine fear in her eyes now. She knew I had all the evidence, and that I wasn't going to let her bullshit her way out of this. I told her I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore, that I was done being played like a fool. That's when I decided I needed to get serious. I had to take some decisive action. I told her I'd gather everything: evidence, recordings, witnesses if I had to, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. I told her I wasn't going to let her ruin my life without consequences. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to understand that I wasn't just some doormat she could walk all over. I was done with her lies, her manipulations, her game playing. She kept crying, begging me to listen, to forgive her, but I was already past that point. I knew I had to do something bigger. From that moment, I shifted into full-on detective mode. I started planning how I could make her regret her choices, how I could turn her own lies back on her. I knew she was planning her own moves, so I had to be one step ahead. I reached out to a private investigator I knew from work, just to get some clarity on her secret meetings with Jason. I didn't want to ruin her life for no reason, but I needed to see the full picture. I told myself I'd be strategic, not reckless. I wanted her to feel cornered, trapped, and exposed. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act. She was still trying to sweet-talk me, trying to make it seem like she was innocent. But I saw through her. Her eyes darted around, her voice cracked when she lied, and she started to lose grip on her composure. It was almost like watching a predator lose its cool. I knew she was scared, and that made me feel a strange mix of satisfaction and hatred. I never thought I'd get to this point, where I'd be the one orchestrating her downfall, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not without paying some kind of price. One night I found myself sitting in the dark, staring at my phone, waiting for the call from the pie. I'd already collected enough evidence to put her in a corner. I decided I'd confront her again, but this time I'd be fully prepared. She thought she was clever, hiding everything, but I was about to turn her own game against her. I started drafting what I was going to say, how I'd reveal everything, watch her crumble, and finally end this nightmare she dragged me into. Because I knew at that moment that this wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was about respect, trust, and my dignity, and I was determined to get those back one way or another. The next morning I woke up with a plan. I was ready. I had all my evidence, my words, and my resolve. Lisa had no idea what was coming, but I was done playing soft. This was war, and I was going to make sure she understood she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. The morning I finally confronted her again, everything felt different. I had the evidence laid out on my laptop, screenshots of her messages, call logs, even recordings from the investigator I hired secretly. I was ready to spill everything to finally put an end to her lies. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, trying to act like she had some kind of upper hand, but I could see the sweat on her forehead, the nervous flicker in her eyes. She knew she was caught, and now she was about to face the consequences. I sat her down at the kitchen table, my hands trembling a little but my voice steady. I told her I knew everything about Jason, the sexting, the secret meetings. I played the recordings I had, and her face went ghostly pale. She kept denying, trying to gaslight me, saying I was crazy, that I was just jealous, that I was imagining things again. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I slammed the laptop closed and looked straight at her. "You lied to me from the start," I said, my voice low but firm. "You lied about being faithful, about loving me. You cheated, and I have proof. You think you can spin your way out of this? No more excuses, you ca. Deny it now." I saw her eyes flick to the side, then back to me. She was trying to come up with some bullshit, but she was cornered. I told her I was done with her lies, her manipulations, her betrayal. She started crying, really crying, her face contorting in a way that was almost satisfying. She begged me to forgive her, said she was sorry, that she loved me and didn't mean for it to happen. She said Jason was just a fling, just some stupid mistake. I was so furious I couldn't even listen anymore. I told her that love wasn't enough anymore, that she'd broken everything, and I didn't want to be with someone who could lie so easily. I told her I was filing for divorce. She looked at me like I'd just slapped her. She begged, tried to come up with some new story to twist everything around, anything to avoid facing reality. She told me I was being ridiculous, that I was overreacting, that I'd ruin her life if I went through with this. But I'd made up my mind. I had to do it. I couldn't keep living with the thought that my wife had been screwing someone else behind my back while I was preparing for a brain enhancement that was supposed to make me smarter. The irony was bitter. For a moment, she just stared at me, speechless. Then she got up abruptly, trying to leave the room, but I blocked her way. I told her she was done, that I was calling a lawyer, that I was going to get full custody of everything. I wanted her out of my life permanently. She looked at me with pure hatred, told me I was overreacting and that I was making a mistake, but I didn't care anymore. All I saw was a woman who had lied to me, betrayed me, and now thought she could somehow escape the consequences. That afternoon, I contacted a lawyer. I started the divorce process. I also made arrangements to move out, get my own place, and cut all ties. It was a hard decision, but I knew I couldn't stay with someone who thought lying and cheating were acceptable. I'd been humiliated enough. I felt sick thinking about how she had spent weeks sneaking around, lying, manipulating, pretending to be innocent. The worst part, she seemed completely unfazed, like she thought she could just brush it off and everything would go back to normal. That made me angrier still. As the days went on, I found myself oscillating between anger and sadness. I hated her for what she did, but I also felt betrayed by myself. How blind I'd been, how much I'd trusted her. I kept replaying the moments when I should have seen the signs, when I should have known she was hiding something. It was a brutal realization. But I also felt a strange sense of relief. No more pretending, no more lies. I was finally free from her manipulation. I knew it was going to be a long road ahead, but at least I was taking the first steps toward reclaiming my life. I can't say I've forgiven her yet. Honestly, I don't think I ever will. But I am moving on, slowly, painfully, but definitely. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that trust is a fragile thing, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to fix. Be careful who you let into your life, because some people just aren't worth it. The aftermath of everything hit me harder than I expected. Once I finally moved out and started the divorce proceedings, I thought I'd feel some kind of relief, maybe even a sense of closure. But instead, I was just numb. I went from feeling furious to devastated, and then to a strange emptiness. Every day was a struggle to keep it together. I kept asking myself how I'd missed all the signs, how I hadn't seen her true face before she tore everything apart. It was like I'd been living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Most nights, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about the moments I missed, her slipping away in her phone, her cold sarcasm, her little lies. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was the realization that I'd trusted her with everything. My feelings, my future, my very mind. Literally, my brain was about to be enhanced, and she was with someone else during that time. I kept replaying her words, her fake apologies, her fake tears. I started to wonder if she'd ever truly loved me, or if I'd just been some kind of fool she didn't care about. One thing I did is start to focus on myself. I threw myself into work, tried to rebuild my confidence. I hired a therapist, something I never thought I'd need, but I knew I had to process all this trauma somehow. The betrayal was a wound that didn't seem to close. I'd see her face everywhere, at the grocery store, on social media, even in my dreams. It was like she haunted me, a constant reminder of how blind I'd been, how much I'd given her without ever really knowing who she was. People kept telling me I should just forget about her, move on, find someone new. But I couldn't just turn off the heartbreak that easily. It wasn't just about cheating. It was the whole betrayal, the lying, the manipulation. Who was she? Someone I'd thought I knew, but apparently she was just a fake, a liar hiding behind a mask. Every time I thought about her, I felt this mixture of anger and sadness, like a wound that would never quite heal. What surprised me most was how much my trust had been shattered, not just in her, but in everyone around me. I used to believe that most people had good intentions. Now I was much more cautious. I started questioning everything, every word, every gesture. It's like I had to rebuild my understanding of what truth even was. The idea of vulnerability now terrifies me. I don't want to get close to anyone again, not until I'm sure they're real, genuine. The most bizarre part, I found myself feeling a strange sense of clarity. I realized how much I'd sacrificed for that relationship, my time, my peace of mind, and how she'd thrown it all away. I learned that trust isn't just about believing someone, it's about feeling safe, feeling secure, and she broke that. She shattered my sense of security completely. Now I'm trying to piece it back together, one fragment at a time. I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from this. Some nights, I still wake up angry, wishing I could undo everything. But I also know I have to move forward. I have to rebuild my life without her. It hurts like hell, but I'm learning that sometimes the most painful lessons are the ones that teach you who you really are. I've got to stop looking for her in every corner, stop hoping she'll come back and fix things. Because that's never going to happen. The only way is forward, even if it's one painful step at a time. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything, I realize I've come a long way, even if it doesn't feel like it. Losing her was a brutal blow, but it forced me to confront things I'd been ignoring for too long. About trust, about myself, about what I truly deserve. I used to think love was enough, that if I just tried hard enough I could fix everything. But I learned that sometimes love isn't enough when there's betrayal involved. Sometimes you have to walk away even if it hurts because staying only means more pain down the line. What really sticks with me now is the lesson that trust is fragile and that it can be broken in an instant. I used to believe that my wife loved me, that we had something unbreakable. Turns out she didn't. She was just pretending, hiding her true self behind a false smile. That realization was devastating, but it also set me free. It made me see that I deserve someone who doesn't lie, who doesn't cheat, who is honest and real. Revenge wasn't my goal, but in a way I think I've gotten it. Not through some petty scheme or elaborate payback, but simply by refusing to be the victim she wanted me to be. I took control, I exposed her lies, and I walked away with my dignity intact. That's probably the most powerful thing I could have done. It's not about hurting her, at least not anymore. It's about reclaiming my life and my peace of mind. So now I focus on rebuilding. I'm rediscovering myself, learning to trust again, but more cautiously this time. I've learned that healing takes time and that the pain of betrayal doesn't just go away. It's part of me now. But I also know that I'm stronger than I thought. I've been through hell and I'm still standing. That's the real victory. My advice to anyone going through something similar: trust your gut. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how small. And if you find yourself betrayed, don't stay in denial. Face it, confront it, and do what you need to do to protect yourself. Because at the end of the day, your happiness, your peace, and your dignity matter more than pleasing someone who doesn't deserve it. Sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away and choosing to be better for yourself.